afternoon, guys. Today is November 19th. This is our, God, I don't know, probably our 15th 12 at 12. My name is Paul Smith with 12 Rivers Realty. Thank you guys for tuning in. Coming up on the last month and a half of the year. Shout out. We got Instagram now just popped up as well. Man, we're coming up to the last 45 days of the year. For those that are trying to hit your year-end goals, man, in real estate, you've got 2 weeks to do it. As you know, our sales cycle ends up being about 30 days. So if you've got those last goals, that push to call those clients to get something to sell, or now's the time if somebody wants to sell prior to the end of the year, it's a good time to start looking at pricing to make sure that you're priced accordingly. Or just be like, all right, look, we're going to hold it and sell in 2026. And also, some people ask me, like, should we buy or should we sell this year or next year? A lot of that is going to be based on the type of tax hit that you may or may not take, right? So I've got an investment property that I'm looking at selling with a fairly substantial gain. And if I sell it on, December 31st of 2025, I'm going to have to pay the taxes on that on April 15th of 2026. Whereas if I sell it and close on January 1st of 2026, now I have an opportunity to go ahead and take that income and that gain and go ahead and try to reinvest that gain over the course of the year and try to make additional money with that. And again, let me explain that one more time. If I sell a property and I close on December 31st of this year, I'm going to have to pay the gain, right? The capital gains on that on April 15th. If I close on January 1st of 2026, let's say it's a $100,000 gain. Now I can go ahead and reinvest that money, as the taxes won't be due immediately. I can go ahead and reinvest that money, as I will have to pay those taxes on April 15th of 2027. Again, definitely ask your CPA about tax things and whatnot, as I'm not a CPA, but I have definitely done that, where I've sold the property, take that gain, and then go ahead and buy something else and try to use that to go ahead and make more money prior to paying the taxes. Because again, you're going to have to, as 2026 comes to an end into 2027, you're going to have to file your taxes. And when you do that, you're going to have to file that income. And so then you're going to have to decide, should you 1031 that or not? And so depending on your timing and your ability to go ahead and reinvest that and potentially make more money with that money, that is something that you can decide, do I do that, buy a flip, and then try to take that 100, reinvest that in there and make more money with it? Or is it better to do a 1031, which does defer that gain until, they can always say defer till you drop, right? That's just a thought that I had, again, as far as if you're looking at selling a property at the end of this year versus holding it and going into next year. Those are the things that I'm typically thinking about when I'm looking at investing. Is part of that is if I'm selling it, how much is my gain and when will I have to pay taxes on that gain? And if I'm closing at the end of a year, that means that I'm going to have to pay those taxes on the April 15th of the following year. If it's closing and pushing it into the next year, beginning of the next year, now that means that I have time to invest that money and try to grow that money significantly more. And of course, if you're growing it in some way, shape, or form, there's going to be other tax implications. But if you get to play with the house money for a little bit longer, I may suggest that you do that, depending on your investment strategy and your level of risk. This is Paul Smith with the 12 at 12. Today is November 19th, and the October market stats just came out for the Austin market. This is the first month in a while where I've seen where we've got the median price going positive in the MSA. Looking at the overall, kind of inventory and everything else, inventory is up. We were talking to the company today, we're talking to 12 Rivers at our sales meeting, and we're talking about the percentage to close ratio, right? So if something is right now in Travis County, it's selling, right now in the Austin MSA, things are selling at about 91 to 92% of list price. So what does that mean? If something's priced at 100,000, it's selling at 91 to 92,000, somewhere in that range. And a lot of that is going to be based on the fact of, did something get priced too high to begin with? Or was something priced the way it should be? In which case, I'm also seeing properties that I'm listing ending up in multiple offer situations. And there's some reasons for that. One, I'm the seller, so I can kind of kind of really direct where I think things should be priced, so that way they move. As I've certainly found myself in some situations where things sit on the market a little too long, and all of a sudden I've lost that leverage to the buyer, and the buyer's kind of pushing me around a little bit. Again, to me, when I'm selling property, I think it's as important as a seller to be able to have the leverage throughout the whole negotiating process versus kind of coming to the buyer hat in hand, as this might be the only offer that we've received. And now it's something where I'm having to fix things that, if it was multiple offers, maybe I wouldn't have fixed. So that's certainly part of the about the process, is not just price, but also leverage. What's up, man? We got Paul Roseberry. My cousin's in the house. Paul, hope you're well. Courtney, thanks for jumping in. Clarissa, as always, it's a pleasure. Paul, we're talking about market stats today. And then, the thing that I was looking at after looking at the market stats that are already published is the November to date market stats, which unfortunately they're pretty bleak. Thinking about what's happened over the past 30 days, 45 days, right? We had a government shutdown, which I think definitely shook the overall kind of consumer sentiment on the economy. We're hearing a bunch of things right now about potential layoffs and jobs and whatnot. And so those are all things that are going to affect the overall macro real estate market in the US. And so then as you start to hear these things, really start to dial down to your kind of your micro level in real estate, right? Is to say, how is the town or city that you're in faring compared to the rest of the US? And what are the drivers behind it, right? What are the things that are driving the economy? One thing, for example, in Austin as a driver is chips, semiconductor chips. Apparently it's the thing that powers the world, aside from actual power, of course, and innovation, right? You've got things in Austin, like companies that are starting up. There's just read a stat that Austin is the #1 city in the US for entrepreneurship. It's one of the top 5 for VC investment. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, fun fact, but there's no other city in the world that within a 100-mile radius has more college students than the city of Austin. Again, that is something that is a huge attraction for companies that are looking to move to Austin. Again, because having a workforce is important. Now, who knows how long it's going to be important? Based on my, kind of my next tip here. Those that don't know, right, as we're talking about places to put money, what's happening specifically within your town, your city, economic drivers that make things important for companies to want to hire, right? Because typically, I always say in real estate, activity breeds activity. And so if jobs are coming to a certain area, that's going to breed activity. And so not only is it going to breed high level jobs, but also other service jobs, things like, I always say, like barbers, hairstylists, dry cleaners, like service industry, right? You're going to need more restaurants to work with the people that are coming in that area, stuff like that, which is neat. I think those are the things that you don't really hear about, right? If you hear the 1,000 jobs coming to Taylor from a semiconductor company, but you don't hear about the 5,000 other jobs that those 1,000 jobs are going to spawn. But man, we had another conversation today that was brought up in our sales meeting that was interesting, is that currently right now, I don't know if you guys have been following or not, but Elon just got a $1 trillion package sign off from Tesla and the Tesla board to create the Optimus factory, essentially. So he's looking at creating robots, essentially, for everybody. We had a little bit of a chuckle last week about robot companions. This shit's actually happening, right? So they've already started to create the factory in Southeast Austin, right? So over off of 130 and 969 and 79, kind of in that pocket over there. Looks like they're going to be doubling their size. So the Tesla factory right now is about 6 million square feet. They're adding another 6 million square feet for the Optimus factory. Now, there's no news or anything that's hit about this yet, other than some drone footage of them starting to do the site work for this space. So now that means that we would have, cars, boring, We've got SpaceX, the AI chip, what is it, like the Neuralink stuff that Elon's doing, and then also we will be doing some iRobot stuff, building robots in Southeast Austin, which really makes sense on why now you have all of these additional semiconductor companies coming to Austin, because all these things are going to need chips, and so that's cool. I mean, that's real cool. I think that's something where, again, if you're looking at where to put money, where is economic growth, right? And I'm seeing all these things now about Austin being the #1 city for first-time home buyers, Austin this, Austin that. That's because our prices have dropped considerably compared to the rest of the world, or at least the rest of the US. And so now we've got to that point where it feels like there's a bottoming of our real estate market. And if you add that into, if with that you also have the substantial amount of jobs, the news has not broke yet about the Optimus factory that's going to be coming there. I haven't heard anything about it other than Elon just getting a $1 trillion bonus for doing that. Which, shout out to him, by the way, for having the balls to ask for a $1 trillion. That would be awesome. Never thought I'd see that, but good for him on that. If you think about the things that are coming specifically in that area, the other thing, again, that we've spoke about a bunch, and I don't want to feel like we're kind of beating a dead horse here, as far as if you're looking for a long-term play to put money into real estate, that Southeast corridor in Austin is awesome, right? You've got Endeavor with 2,500 acres, of which they've already got the ability to bring utilities to 2,000 acres, which is huge. They did the Domain, which those that are in Austin know that's going to be Austin's second downtown, which is going to be uptown. So that level of a developer is coming in and doing the area over by the Dog's Head, which is real close to 183 and Balm Road. It's currently, right now, all that land is fairly industrial. It's all industrial. With the exception of the Hope Gallery, which shout out to Hope Gallery, those that don't know about it. It used to be a urban graffiti park for artists. Now it's an organization that is helping artists and creatives throughout their journey of becoming an artist to owning a business to then kind of that next level. And it's pretty amazing. So those that don't know, go check out the Hope Gallery. Also out by the Dog's Head, really close to this 2,500 acres that Endeavor has purchased. And I would say within less than a mile as the crow flies, now you've got the Tesla factory, and also you have the Optimus factory and a bunch of other stuff going in out that area. So you can pick up a single family home out in Austin Colony right now for, I bet you, as low as $225. That would lease out for $1,800. Again, not huge cash flow, especially given how rental rates are currently depressed. But one of the things that I will say, as to quote who I wish he was my friend, Warren Buffett, says, when people are running away from it, you should run towards it. And when you're starting to see the news about Austin being the #1 buyer's market in the US, you're going to start to see people start to run towards it pretty quickly, especially if they think that the prices have bottomed, because we still have the things that you need to grow, which is positive migration of people and positive job growth. Those are two things that we have that have not changed. And so our GDP, last I checked, was at that 200 billion level. And over the next 10 years, it's going to hit a 450 billion level. And that's not including the additional things that have been, announced over the past, let's say year, basically. I know when we spoke to the folks over at Opportunity Austin, I guess it was last year's time, they had said there's a lot of companies that are ready to announce moving to Austin. However, they weren't ready to announce that yet because they wanted interest rates to come down, because they don't want to move their employees. And all of a sudden they're leaving 2 and 3% mortgages and having to buy in a 7 or 8% environment, which is what it was. Now rates, you can get high 5s and low 6s as far as rates go. So those are things that you're going to start to see, is that there's a fair amount of companies that are kind of loaded in the hopper that are ready to start announcing that Austin is going to be the place for them. So yeah, these are all kind of cool, positive things that are happening in the Austin market, which is why I believe that putting money in the market is important. I'm currently doing that. I'm currently building and investing. I would suggest you do as well. I would say do your research on what asset classes you should invest in, right? I don't think I would probably go out and buy well, maybe depending on the pricing, but if it were me, I wouldn't be going out and looking to buy a large multifamily property that needs to be remodeled versus looking at other things like industrial right now is cooking, especially with if you're looking in areas that also check the boxes of potentially being an opportunity zone. And if it's got manufacturing, there's all these different things that for tax incentives that you can layer on top of that to include depreciation and potentially adjusting your cost basis. So when you sell in 10 years, not only do you not have to pay back your depreciation, but then you also raise your cost basis and have a gain there as well. So these are all things that if I was going to, a lot of times with real estate, some people might, if you use the analogy that it's like playing roulette in a lot of ways, right? Like some people, let me say this. If you don't know what you're doing in real estate, it can certainly feel like you're playing roulette because you're just throwing a dart at the dartboard and hoping that works. But as you start to dig a little bit deeper, you start to realize there's reasons why Austin is growing the way it's growing. And so then now imagine that if you are, if you're now just playing with one half of the roulette table while everybody else has 36 or 38 spots, but now that it's going to be maybe only red, right? So now you're 50% better than everybody else. And now all of a sudden, it's going to be red in, let's say, even numbers, right? So now you're even better off. And this, again, is just doing more of your research. So that way your chances of hitting are substantially higher. And also your chances of appreciation. And if you're going to put that same dollar in to, I don't know, let's say Cedar Park versus that same dollar in Southeast Austin, if I was a betting man, I would bet that dollar will go much further and appreciate much quicker in Southeast Austin. So those are all things to me, kind of when I'm looking at investing, things that I'm kind of just weighing those options basically at that point. Guys, again, this is Paul Smith with the 12 at 12. Jumping over to ABJ real quickly. The Austin Power Players in 2025 came out. Man, not on it. Never thought I would be. But who knows, maybe at some point. But I do want to shout out a good friend of mine and mentor, Angelos. Angelou is one of the top guys here. And so I appreciate him and all of his mentorship for me, because a lot of times I end up finding out some really great things happening in Austin because of people. And ultimately, a lot of times, guys, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And we are really I think we're in the information game. Kind of switching gears real quickly. We've talked about jobs. We've talked about a positive migration of people. One of the things I think that Austin has is a lot of innovation. Again, we've talked about how highly educated of a populace we have with UT. Also, you've got A&M, you've got Baylor to the north, Texas State to the south. There's a lot of large colleges within a 100-mile radius of Austin. But one of the cool things that I was just reading about is that there's a defense startup that 3D prints warheads, and it's got an HQ in Bastrop. How cool is that? I was on a pitch about 2 years ago. I actually think it might have been with this company. And if it is, and I didn't invest, Angelos, I'm sorry about that. I'm an idiot. However, what's cool about this and the IP that they had is that they were able to 3D print metal alloys larger than, their IP enabled their printers to stay cooler longer, which meant that they could print larger, larger equipment and whatnot. And so the fact that this is a company that is innovated in Austin, very cool. But I'd have to wonder if Army Future Command was not stationed in Austin, would this have been something that would have started here? Right? Because it's not hard for me to think that something given what's going on in the world, being able to 3D print military applications is probably really, really big. And so The name of the company is Bravo Ordnance, and it's growing in Bastrop County. Again, I think it's real neat to see a company that was innovated in Austin that has real world applications that you can just see is going to go gangbusters at some point based on the cool things that they're already doing out in the world. And that's a lot of that. That's from that innovation piece. But the thing that we haven't necessarily spoke about is the pieces of what does having Army Future Command out of Austin, what does that mean for Austin? I think you're going to see lots of startups like this. Icon is another company that's 3D printing homes. They have a huge military application. They are, they've been engaged to build on the moon, and they're doing some really cool things with that. There's a lot of innovation in that way, and I've got to think that if you are, would those companies be here if you did not have, say, the Army Future Command here in that way? I don't know, but my guess is probably yes on that. Guys, again, this is Paul Smith. You're tuning into the 12 at 12. And one last thing I want to talk about. There's a list of local companies that are seeking foreign trade zone designations. Guys, for those that don't know, you can get a foreign trade zone designation, which is similar to if it's a port, right? So a lot of times when materials come into the U.S., there's it comes into a port, and until it comes through that port, it's technically still considered a foreign trade zone, which means that they don't have to pay tariffs on it and stuff like that, basically. And the designation allows companies to assess benefits like duty deferral, duty elimination on exported goods, and reduce duties on certain materials, making them more competitive. And there's several of these zones in Dallas right now in the Denton area. And it's the same as if it came through the New York port, basically. And so until it goes through customs, it's in this type of a zone, which means that companies then can get a benefit from that. That's happening here as well, which is very neat. And so cool, because it's almost like a U.S. Customs and Border Protection, but not on the border. And so there's companies here that are applying for that, which I think is great for commerce and also great considering all the things happening in the world right now as far as just different trade rules and whatnot. But yeah, that's the one thing. I'll do a little bit more kind of digging into that to see which companies. But this is the first in which I've heard that it's actually somebody in Austin doing this. I've seen it in the Dallas area before. Guys, again, this is Paul Smith. You're tuning into the 12 at 12. We do this every Wednesday. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Again, thank you for tuning in. Have a good one. Peace.